Imagine waking up one morning and realizing you have to fluently speak a language you have literally never heard before.
Oh, it is completely overwhelming.
Right. You're just drowning in acronyms, like IEP, APE, ARD, LRE. But, well, what if I told you that hidden inside a really dry, bureaucratic PDF, specifically the Garland ISD Special Education Manual, is the exact Rosetta Stone you actually need?
Yeah, the literal instruction manual.
Exactly. So today on the deep dive, we aren't just reading the rules, we're hacking them. If you've been navigating the world of special education for your child, you already know you have to advocate for them.
You have to. No one else will do it quite like you.
Right. But today, our mission is to, decode the system so you can outmaneuver the bureaucratic roadblocks, understand your absolute rights, and build a strategy that actually works. We're taking this manual and turning it into an actionable roadmap.
And that strategic shift is everything. I mean, it's the difference between being a passenger who's just hoping the school does the right thing and being the driver who actually dictates the route.
Yeah, taking control of the wheel.
Exactly. Because we have to look past the dense terminology to understand the why behind these federal guidelines, like the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act.
Right, IDA.
Right. When you understand the underlying mechanisms that force a school district's hand, like strict timelines and legal mandates, you stop asking for favors and you start exercising your rights.
I love that. Stop asking for favors. So let's get right into the mechanics of exercising those rights. Let's say you have a child and you are seeing some serious red flags academically or behaviorally. You can't just rely on a hunch or like an informal chat with the teacher. The manual is very clear about something called the child find mandate.
Yes, child find is huge.
Right. And this isn't a suggestion. Garland ISD is legally required to actively identify and evaluate kids from birth all the way up to age 21 with suspected disabilities.
From day one, essentially.
Exactly. And just to get specific, if your child is, aged 0 to 36 months, that's handled by Early Childhood Intervention, or ECI, over at the Warren Center. You literally just call them at 972-490-9055.
Right. They handle the really early intervention stuff.
But once they hit age 3, it shifts. And from a parent's perspective, you have to trigger that mandate officially. You can't just
mention it and pass it.
Exactly. You bypass the drop-off line small talk, you skip the casual email to the math teacher, and you submit a formal written request for an evaluation. You contact the school counselor or the diagnostician, or just call the Garland ISD Special Education Department directly at 972-487-3300. You have to get it on paper.
Getting it in writing is the critical catalyst here. The very moment that written request is stamped received, it activates a strict 15-school-day legal clock.
Wait, 15 school days?
Yes, exactly, 15 school days. The district cannot legally sit on your request and say, oh, well, we will just monitor the situation for the rest of the semester.
Wow. Okay, so initiating this process is, it's a lot like requesting a formal building inspection, right?
It's a great way to put it.
Yeah, because you can't just casually mention a leaky roof to the principal and expect a fix. You have to put the request in writing. And once you do, it starts this strict legal clock for the district to literally show up with their clipboards.
They have to show up.
Er-
That 15-day window forces ultimate accountability. By day 15, they must respond with either a formal proposal to evaluate, which is going to include a consent form, and this massive document detailing your procedural safeguards.
The giant packet of legalese, right?
The giant packet, yes. Or they must give you a formal written refusal explaining exactly why they won't evaluate.
Okay, I want to focus on that proposal to evaluate, which the manual calls a full and individual evaluation, or FA.
The FFIA.
That word full carries a ton of weight here. It feels like a safeguard against a district just, giving a kid a quick 20-minute reading comprehension test and just calling it a day.
Oh, it absolutely is a safeguard. Full means they are legally bound to assess all suspected areas of disability, not just one.
Okay, so all of them.
Yeah. So if a student is struggling with reading, but they also have, say, severe anxiety that impacts their focus, the evaluation team can't just test for dyslexia and completely ignore the psychological component.
That makes sense.
They must gather data on cognitive function, academic achievement, behavioral issues, and even motor skills, if that's applicable. And then the individual part of FSE means it is tailored precisely to your child's unique profile.
Which means they need the parent's input.
Inherently, yes. It requires your extensive input as a parent. The school only sees the student from 8 to 3. You see the whole picture.
And we should explicitly mention the financial reality of this too, because if a parent were to go to a private neuropsychologist to get this kind of comprehensive, multidisciplinary
Not
testing,
incredibly expensive.
right, they're easily looking at thousands of dollars out of pocket. But under the federal principle of FAPE-free appropriate public education, these district evaluations are provided at absolutely no cost to the family.
And that no-cost element is vital. That financial protection ensures that access to specialized education isn't restricted by a family's income.
Right, it levels the field.
Exactly. FAPE is this federal shield that guarantees every single child gets a baseline of appropriate evaluation and instruction, totally regardless of their zip code or their tax bracket.
Okay, so the 15-day clock runs out, the evaluation is complete, and suddenly you've got this massive stack of diagnostic data. The anxiety kind of shifts from, will they test my kid, to what are they actually going to do with all this information?
Right. Now you have to make a plan.
Yeah, and that brings us to the negotiation table. In Garland ISD, within 30 days of that evaluation, they schedule what Texas calls an ARD meeting.
Right. The Admission Review and Dismissal Committee. Other states usually just call it the IEP team, but the function is exactly the same. This is the room where the raw data is translated into an actual educational plan.
Okay, but I have to pause on that acronym, though, ARD. The D stands for dismissal.
I know, it's not the best word.
Right. If I'm a parent walking into a room with 6 or 7 credentialed professionals for the first time, and I'm feeling entirely vulnerable, that D is terrifying.
It sounds so final.
It does. It sounds like the school has the authority to just vote to kick a child out of the special education program without the parent's agreement.
It is an unfortunate piece of terminology, I'll admit. But understanding the legal structure behind it completely neutralizes that fear. You are an equal partner on this committee by federal law.
An equal partner, so they can't just overrule me.
No, the school staff cannot unilaterally outvote you. Dismissal in this context usually refers to like a positive graduation from a specific service.
Oh, okay. Like
Okay.
what?
It's like a speech therapist recommending dismissal because your child has successfully mastered all of their articulation goals. They don't need the service anymore. But the bedrock of the entire ARD process is parental consent. They absolutely cannot change placement or dismiss a child from special education services without your agreement.
Okay, let's play out a realistic scenario then. What happens if I'm at that table, I've listened to the diagnostician, I've seen their proposed plan, and I fundamentally believe it's just not enough?
Okay.
Do I just say no? What does that dispute actually look like the next morning?
Well, if you disagree, you literally do not sign an agreement. You check the box on the paperwork that says you disagree.
Wow, just check the box.
Just check the box. And the next morning, you aren't just left in a void. You have a whole menu of legally protected dispute resolution options.
Like what kind of options?
So you can request an independent educational evaluation, an IEE at the district's expense, if you think their testing was flawed.
Wait, the district pays for a second opinion?
Yes, if you request an IEE. You can also trigger a formal mediation process, which brings in a neutral third party from the state to help negotiate a settlement.
Okay. And if that still doesn't work?
If that fails, you can file a formal complaint with the Texas Education Agency, or you can request a due process hearing, which operates almost like a specialized court case.
Man, that significantly changes the power dynamic in the room. You aren't asking for permission, you are negotiating terms.
Precisely. You are an equal member of that team.
And knowing you don't have to go into that room alone is a huge tactical advantage. The manual outlines that you can bring individuals who have specialized knowledge of your child, right?
Yes, anyone who knows the child or has expertise.
So you can bring a professional advocate, a private therapist, or honestly, just a highly organized friend to take detailed notes while you focus on the conversation.
Having a note taker is brilliant, actually.
Right. Plus, if a parent needs an interpreter to fully grasp the technical jargon in their native language, the school is legally on the hook to provide one.
Because if you cannot understand the proceedings, you are being denied your right to be an equal partner.
Exactly.
And the ultimate goal of this negotiation is the creation of the Individualized Education Program, the IEP. And this isn't just a polite list of suggestions for the teacher.
It's binding, right?
It is a legally binding contract. It dictates the students' present levels of performance, their highly specific annual goals, and the exact frequency, literally down to the minute, of the specialized services they will receive.
Which brings us to the actual toolkit. You're at the table, you know your rights, you're ready to advocate, but what are you actually demanding? The manual highlights a massive legal and strategic distinction between the two major paths of support, an IEP versus a 504 plan.
Very different things, yes.
Right. So if you're a parent trying to figure out which hill to die on, understanding the difference in the mechanisms of these two plans is vital.
It is, because they stem from two completely different legislative frameworks.
Okay, break that down for us.
Sure. So an IEP is governed by IDEA, which is an education law focused entirely on providing specially designed instruction.
Okay, specially designed instruction.
Yes, but a 504 plan is governed by Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, which is actually a civil rights law designed to prevent discrimination based on disability. It does not require parental consent to implement, though they do notify you.
Okay, the way I look at it, a 504 plan is essentially like getting a prescription for eyeglasses, right?
I like that analogy.
It levels the playing field. It provides accommodations like extra time on tests or preferential seating for a student with ADHD so they can clearly access the general curriculum just like everyone else.
Exactly. They get the same curriculum, just with fewer barriers.
But an IEP is like having a specialized tutor sit next to you, fundamentally altering how the information is delivered, like teaching you to read Braille. It's specially designed instruction, not just an environmental tweak.
That distinction completely dictates your strategy. Because if your child is succeeding academically but just needs, their physical or environmental barriers removed, a 504 plan is a highly effective, less restrictive tool.
Makes sense?
However, a 504 plan does not offer the same rigorous procedural safeguards regarding discipline or placement changes that an IEP does.
That's a big caveat.
It is. And this ties directly into the overarching concept of least restrictive environment, or LRE.
Right, LRE.
The federal mandate is that a student must be educated alongside their non-disabled peers to the maximum extent appropriate.
So you don't just default to isolating kids.
No, absolutely not.
Which leads us to look at how Garland ISD specifically structures their programs to maintain that least restrictive environment. They have a whole menu of acronyms in this manual.
Now, so many acronyms.
So many. You've got inclusion support and content mastery, where the special education teacher actually pushes into the general education classroom to modify assignments on the fly.
Which is a great model for a lot of kids.
Yeah. But I want to zero in on the behavioral programs they outline. So there's BA, which is behavior adjustment, and BASE, the behavior and academic support environment for secondary students.
Right, BASE.
I have to admit, I look at these and I'm highly skeptical. I mean, is this just a modernized, bureaucratic version of sending a kid to detention? How does the manual guarantee this isn't just warehousing students who act out?
It's a very valid skepticism given the historical tendency of schools to just isolate challenging behaviors.
Right, just put them in a separate room.
Exactly. But the mechanism of programs like BA and BASE is vastly different from punitive detention. They operate on the premise that behavior is communication.
Behavior is communication.
Yes. So instead of just punishing a student for a disruption, these environments utilize explicit social skills curricula. The focus is on conducting functional behavior assessments to figure out exactly why the student is acting out.
So finding the root cause.
Right. Maybe it's work avoidance. Maybe it's sensory overload. And then they formally teach replacement behaviors. They explicitly teach the student how to recognize their triggers and, request a break rather than throwing a desk.
Oh, wow.
The academic instruction continues, but the environment is structured to safely teach emotional regulation.
So it's treating the behavior as a skill deficit that requires actual instruction, just like a deficit in long division.
Exactly. It's a skill they haven't mastered yet.
Yeah.
And we see a similar specialized approach in their ABC program, Adaptive Behavior and Communication.
And that one is for autism, right?
Yes. It's designed for students on the autism spectrum, or those with traumatic brain injuries or neurological impairments. The mechanism here isn't just generic social skills. It's highly tailored to neurological processing.
Right. So in an ABC classroom, you might see a teacher literally pause an academic lesson to explicitly role-play how to handle the frustration of a sudden change in the daily schedule, right?
Yes, dealing with those transitions.
They are directly addressing the neurological rigidities that come with autism and integrating that communication practice right alongside the math or reading goals.
Absolutely. And then for students who require an even more intensive focus on life application, Garland ISD utilizes the ALE program Applied Learning Environment.
Okay, ALE.
And this includes variations like MTI, moving toward independence. The focus here shifts heavily toward the practical application of academics.
So real-world skills.
Exactly. It's not just learning to identify coins on a worksheet. It's the functional skill of counting change to make a purchase, or mastering the self-help and daily living routines necessary for transitioning into adulthood.
Okay, fast forward 6 months. The intense evaluations are done. You negotiated the IEP at the ARD table. Your child is placed in the right environment, whether that's with a 504 plan for accommodations or an IEP utilizing inclusion support.
You've made it through the hard part.
Right. But now it's a random Tuesday night in October. The manual shifts its focus here to what I like to call the parent's administrative burden, because maintaining this system year over year requires a staggering amount of organization.
It really does. It's a second job.
It is. The state guidelines heavily push the creation of a physical parent binder. And honestly, creating this notebook feels like you need an advanced degree in administrative law.
It's intimidating.
You're compiling evaluations, progress reports, meeting notes, and legally binding IEP documents. The thing ends up looking the size of a George R.R. Martin fantasy novel.
Easily. It is a massive undertaking. But that binder is the institutional memory of your child's education.
Right. Creating this physical notebook is basically like keeping a detailed service history for a highly complex, custom-built car.
That's exactly what it is.
You don't just rely on the mechanic's memory next year. You bring the receipts to prove exactly what was agreed upon and when.
And you have to, because the sad reality of the special education ecosystem is high turnover.
Oh, yeah. Teachers leave all the time.
Your child's phenomenal special education teacher might move districts next year. The principal who championed your 504 plan might retire. State policies might shift. That giant binder ensures continuity of care. It is your absolute proof of exactly what was agreed upon, what data supported it, and what interventions have historically failed.
The manual makes a point that I think is the most brutal but totally necessary advice for any parent. Schools must implement only those supports formally documented in the IEP.
Only what is written down.
Right. If you have a fantastic teacher who's doing you a favor by giving your child extra breaks or modifying their homework, but it isn't formally written into the paperwork, the next teacher doesn't have to do it. It literally doesn't exist.
It's invisible.
You have to constantly check the official paperwork against the classroom reality. Trust, but verify.
If it is not in writing, it holds zero legal weight. That is why the manual emphasizes regular, documented communication with the teacher.
Okay, so stay on top of them.
Yes. Now, the IEP is reviewed annually, and they do a formal reevaluation at least every 3 years. But a parent's greatest leverage is knowing that you do not have to wait for the school's calendar.
Oh, really?
Really, if it's October and the documented supports are clearly failing, you don't wait for the annual review in May. You have the right to request an ARD meeting immediately to revise the plan.
You can just call a meeting whenever.
Yes. You know your child best. If the data at home doesn't match the data at school, you force the conversation.
Man, it is an incredibly demanding role to take on, but look at the toolkit we've unpacked today.
It's a lot, but it's powerful.
It is. You now know how to bypass the casual conversations and trigger that 15-day legal clock for an evaluation. You know that walking into the ARD meeting, you carry the absolute right of consent and the power to dispute their findings through mediation or state complaints.
Right, you're an equal partner.
You understand the strategic difference between deploying a 504 plan to level the playing field versus fighting for an IEP to secure specially designed instruction. You know how to look critically at local programs like BA or ABC and ask how they are teaching replacement behaviors rather than just accepting a label. And you know that building that massive, overwhelming parent binder is your ultimate insurance policy against a constantly shifting bureaucracy.
It's a journey that requires vigilance, but it's one you are now equipped to navigate.
Absolutely.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you build your strategy. We spent a lot of time discussing the broad, sweeping federal protections of IDEA in Section 504.
Right, the big federal laws.
But as we explored, the actual execution happens through highly specific, pre-packaged local programs like Garland's base or MTI classes.
Yeah, the local interpretation.
Exactly. So consider this. As an advocate, how do you ensure that these rigid local programmatic structures truly bend to fit your child's unique individualized blueprint, rather than allowing the sheer weight of the bureaucracy to make your child bend to fit the program?
Wow, that's the real challenge, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, you aren't just learning this bureaucratic language to pass a test. You're hacking the rules so you can finally write the story your child deserves.